morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is James Finglas, and on behalf of the team here at MJ Flood Technology, I'd like to welcome you to this webinar on Teams and Teams Voice, MJ Flood Voice, actually. So, look, we've got a packed agenda this morning. You're going to hear from Jonathan Finglas around what's new in Teams and things around the aspects like licensing and how that can be achieved. We'll then be handing over to Steve Bush, who's our top consultant here for Teams Voice, and he'll take us through the proposition that is MJ Flood Voice, take us through some of the third-party integrations, and then of course Teams Rooms. So for those of you not familiar with MJ Flood Technology, as part of the MJ Flood Group, and founded in 1998, the technology piece, and turning over 20 million. So a substantial organization involved as a key MSP around the Microsoft stack to Irish industry. So in terms of our actual Microsoft, you might just move on, Jonathan, there. In terms of Microsoft, and you talk about Teams, Teams Voice, Teams integration, we are the people to deal with. The top partner in the country from a Microsoft perspective, award-winning over many years. And selection of a good partner is absolutely vital when it comes to this, because things can be confusing in terms of Teams Voice, how it's integrated. Some of our competition offer private cloud. Be wary of things like that. Microsoft make a very significant investment into security, and we, as an organization, lead out with a cyber first message, which is important to you as a company these days. So watch out for those. The other key message is, there's been a seismic shift in phone systems, but obviously accelerated by COVID-19 and working from home, and it's moved from the black box on the wall into part of the application stack. So once again, communications providers will be grappling to keep pace with that sort of seismic shift in how the technology is applied, whereas systems integrators like ourselves, we live and breathe this sort of stuff. So they're kinds of things that, apart from the actual technology and what the guys will take you through, they're important things to look at. We'll see that the domain that was perhaps Cisco or Avaya or that sort of thing has just moved. But an important piece on that as well is that if you've made a significant investment into some of these technologies, and you need to sweat that asset, we can create hybrid environments. It's not a question of throwing everything out and starting again. Teams can be integrated, and you can create a hybrid type environment, and we've done that for an enormous amount of customers. So look, I just wanted to welcome you and introduce you this morning, and really what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over to the experts to get to the meat on the bone, as it were. So with that in mind, I'm going to hand over to Jonathan Finglas, and I look forward to speaking to you all later on. And just one final point is that don't be afraid to pop some questions into the chat and we can deal with those. Jonathan, over to you.
Good morning, James, and good morning, everyone. My name is Jonathan Finglas. I'm the Microsoft practice lead here in MJ Flood Technology. I suppose what I wanted to kick off very much is, what is Microsoft Teams Voice? We all know Teams is an application. It's being used in most or all organizations in some way, shape or form, particularly over the last couple of years where it's become very pervasive in how we actually get things done. But from a Teams calling perspective, Teams Phone and what we've looked at as MJ Flood Voice powered by Microsoft Teams, this is the next kind of evolution of Microsoft Teams. Obviously, we are very aware of the instant messaging functionality. Then what happened was Microsoft introduced video, then they introduced document collaboration, and now what we're doing is we're implementing voice to form true unified communications. I suppose one of the questions that we get on a daily basis in engagement with customers, be it our own customers or net new customers, can it replace the traditional PBX? And the answer simply is yes. Anything that your traditional PBX is doing at the moment, Microsoft Teams can do. There are some stipulations around some third-party integrations, but we'll cover them off in this presentation as well. Thinking about Microsoft in terms of this landscape, you know, they're not new to the telephony market. If you think back over the last 10 years, you're looking at OCS, moving into Link, moving into Skype for Business, and now arriving at Microsoft Teams and Teams phone system. I think from a kind of availability and a point of view of, is it ready for the market? You know, you can see, you know, our good friends in Gartner, which everyone refers to, you know, they are up there, and as James mentioned, ahead of some big traditional players. The benefits of using Microsoft and looking at potentially public cloud managed by MJ Flood Voice is that we're leveraging the global infrastructure and the network that Microsoft have built, and a network that is unparalleled in terms of what we can deliver as our own businesses. I suppose the question is, why use Microsoft Teams as your phone system? And I suppose it kind of ties into the mindset of where Microsoft have taken us over the last 10 years in a subscription as a service-based model. The main thing and the most important thing is that it is an evergreen platform. You know, we've seen the success of Microsoft 365. Majority of organizations have either stepped their toe in it or fully embraced it. And that's the benefit of the subscription as a service model. And this is very much IP-based telephony as a service. The traditional days of investing huge amounts of money and putting the traditional based PBX in the office and running it for, you know, 10, 12 years are now behind us. We're looking to move to a dynamic platform that's being invested in constantly from a features and from a features point of view, but also from a security point of view that James alluded to earlier. And that's really the reason why Microsoft are seeing so much success in this space. Obviously, you know, Microsoft licensing and Microsoft tenancies have exploded over the last couple of years in terms of organizations actually implementing cloud-based services using that platform. The key fact of looking at Microsoft Teams phone system is, if you already have an Office 365 subscription or a Microsoft 365 subscription, you're 50% of the way there. Some people, if you've embraced Microsoft 365 E5 and the licensing element, which I'll touch on a little bit later, you know, you're already there. And that is a key thing. We're looking at just building up the stack of Microsoft services and unifying it into one platform that integrates and talks to each other, be that from an Exchange point of view or from a Teams application point of view. The general kind of, you know, questions that we've got as we looked at this a couple of years ago, it didn't seem to fit the bill. And the answer to that really is, it is coming on leaps and bounds, and it is ever evolving and ever dynamic. We are finding in meetings over the last 12 to 18 months, there is not a requirement from a PBX point of view that we cannot meet. Yes, some organizations have more advanced requirements, but out of the box, Microsoft Teams voice and Teams phone system will fit your current requirements. And if there is advanced capabilities, we can work with you with our specialist third-party integrations to actually be able to make sure that you're getting even more than what you're getting at the moment from your current telephony system. If you have an existing SBC investment or session border controller investment, maybe you're in the public sector that leverages off government networks, we can leverage that investment from a Teams phone point of view. So it doesn't always have to be absolutely everything from the stack, from the PSTN to the 365 license to the calling and the implementation and the managed services. You know, we can come in as specialist partners and leverage your existing investments and help you on the journey from where you are now to actually delivering Teams phone system as a service to your end users. As I alluded to earlier, the PBX features and what does it offer? And again, I'll kind of reiterate, there's probably nothing that it cannot offer that you'd already require. So, you know, what people look at is, can I do my call queues? Can I do hunt groups? And that is all out of the box and easily customizable through the Teams platform. auto attendance and IVRs, music on hold, all of this kind of functionality is readily available, and all it takes is a good partner to be able to analyze what you're currently doing, then optimize it, and then deliver it within the Teams admin center. But call divert, voicemail, direct routing and call reporting are all things that are pre-built and pre-thought of from a Microsoft perspective. There's no specialist coding or specialist requirements in PowerShell to be able to deliver all of this. It just takes the mindset of how it flows logistically from a thought process point of view into an implementation point of view, and then always monitoring to see if we can evolve it even further. Does it really fit everyone, and what's the reality? It fits all standard calling requirements and should do everything that your current telephony is doing and more. There are a couple of things that we're calling out, and they're not negatives, but they're things to evaluate when looking at a Teams voice journey or trying to build a roadmap to a cloud-based telephony solution such as Microsoft Teams. Obviously, if you have compliance recording point of requirements, what we do is we've built an ecosystem of third-party integrators that are API enabled from Microsoft to be able to deliver on them functionalities and can give you the full flow of what you're looking to deliver in Microsoft Teams. It really fits if you've got a dispersed workforce, which obviously in the world of hybrid work that everyone is talking about now, be it working in the office, work from home, or even if you're looking at an international base, Microsoft Teams gives a unified platform to absolutely everyone across the globe, wherever you're working from, or wherever you're trying to collaborate from. And in particular, kind of optimizing that experience, that it's the same platform across laptop, desktop, mobile device, or Teams rooms, which again, where I'll talk about later on in the slides. Where it doesn't fit is where connectivity is poor, but we've seen over the last couple of years that the throughputs required to run IP-based telephony have really come down. And in terms of your broadband capabilities and your infrastructure you've currently got at the moment, what we do is a network readiness assessment as part of our engagement as the Microsoft partner for voice. We will clearly identify where there might be pitfalls. We identify them, we remedy them, and then we move to the next stage of the process of evaluation. So what does Teams voice actually look like? And people ask me this question on a daily basis. What will change about my business? Or what is this actually going to give me over and above what I'm getting at the moment? Well, the answer to that is quite simple. To deliver telephony was really about delivering dial tone. And people have talked about unified communications and have put in systems that, need multiple servers and multiple specialist engineers to manage. Essentially, what MJ Flood voice and Teams voice is enabling is bringing calling and PSTN calling into the Teams application. So this is a phone experience of what my Teams application looks like on a daily basis. I'm sure you're all very familiar with some of the icons on it, be the activity, the chat, the Teams in terms of the collaboration piece, integration with your calendar. But you can see there, I've got a call icon enabled by the Teams phone standard license within Microsoft and 365. What this allows me to do is actually bring in PSTN connectivity and bring a soft client to the desktop or the laptop or the mobile phone, whereby I can now have my DDI directly in front of me. I can dial out and I can dial in. It then takes it a little bit further in terms of the collaboration aspect of Microsoft Teams, which we're all kind of feeling the benefits of over the last couple of years since embracing the technology. Something as simple as the kind of recent missed and outgoing calls really integrates the environment and the end users together. No longer are we looking at blind DDIs. We're looking at images of the end user. We're looking at their name. We can do dial by name or number. And then additionally, we've got speed dial. These are all things that were never really available on the handset that was sitting on the desk that just rang in and rang out. Now, on that note, you don't have to transform your business completely. If there are end users that still require the handset and still want the handset on the desk to be able to do traditional base dialing, we can enable that as well. There are Teams certified devices that we can put on the desks to enable that functionality for the end users that really don't want to move to a soft client. In terms of the availability of information, at a glance, you've got important call settings. You can set your forwarding out to your own mobile phone. You can forward to voicemail, and you can customize your voicemail very easy. I.e., I'm going on annual leave. I set that up. It's no longer a tedious task to be able to make them simple changes, which are still quite traditional when even doing it on your mobile phone. This is really bringing it into the application and obviously integrating with Active Directory and all of your other Microsoft technologies that you're probably delivering to your businesses today. So how does it work in terms of, a simple call flow? A question we get asked as a potential, what they feel is a blocker when engaging with businesses, how does this work for my receptionist? How does this work, in a real life scenario? They're used to the big, switchboards, then they're used to contacting people, through that traditional method. We make that seamless for high volume call takers, such as receptionists, but also to the end user. Obviously, what we can do is the ability to do call transfers, consultative or blind, i.e., call transfer comes in, we can send directly to the end user. We can do that by name rather than having to remember the DDI or having that Excel spreadsheet printed out at reception to say this is the DDI number. That is now not, that's the traditional way of managing that. We've now got integrations and familiarity of technology to be able to transfer more effectively, making the high volume call takers job even easier, even better, and even more intuitive. Leveraging technology and moving away from Excel spreadsheets with DDIs on it. We can also do things like consultative transfer in terms of being able to notify the person that they've got a call coming in as well. So it's not just going directly to them. You can do a consultative by letting them know by voice, by IM, as you're seeing on my screen here in the scenario, and actually being able to, notify them of a call coming in a more integrated fashion. Auto attendance and call queues are a functional part of any business. And I think what's important, whether you're an SME or whether you're a large enterprise, listening to me speak here, is we need to be able to present a professional front to our business, whether you're 5, 10 users or you're in the multi thousands of users. We need to be able to make the experience of the customer calling your business even better. And that is done, by the means of communication of phone and voice, which is still very prevalent today. So we've got to be able the ability to be able to do custom greetings and menus. You can pick your own music. You can change your own greeting to the locality of where you're sitting as well. You're not predefined and confined to robotic speech or anything like that. Everything is customizable, but it's not hard to customize. So within our managed services, we build in the opportunity to kind of change and our team's voice in a modular fashion, whereby if there's something do you want changed, we will look at it and we will help you deliver that customization to the business. Something as simple as voicemail. In traditional based phone systems, be them on-prem or even in the cloud, delivered by cloud services, voicemail used to be an additional license. It used to be complex to set up in terms of the routing. That is all integrated into the AD credential, the user, the voicemail element of the phone system license. And then obviously you can do simple things like the transcription to email as well, so you can catch that voicemail on the fly. I think in terms of understanding licensing, I think we all know Microsoft is a difficult place to play in terms of understanding it, and that's because they change it so much. So we would have delivered a couple of webinars, and I deliver kind of presentations to small and large clients, on a daily and weekly basis. We need to keep a breadth of the licensing posture to make sure that we're positioning best license for our customers, and we really do try and optimize that. Be it looking at the licensing posture all up, or being very clear and defined around what you're trying to achieve. So to give you a graphic to be able to look at, if you're on 365 at the moment, you're probably using one of the licenses on the left. Sub 300 users is usually business basic, standard, or premium. Plus 300 or the enterprise is usually Office 365 E1 or E3. Now, they're not only the only license you might have in your business. You might have Exchange only, all of these type of different mixes. Essentially, if you're sub 300, we can meet the requirement to have Teams voice enabled, which is the calling icon in the application I showed you earlier, by adding a Teams phone standard license. So this is a cloud-based phone system license with the advanced features that I've shown you previously, but it's delivered through the Microsoft 365 tenant. It includes the dial-in audio conferencing. So now not only are we giving the end user the ability to dial in and dial out, But when they're setting up Teams meetings, we're giving their customers or their peers the ability to dial in if connectivity is not great in that area, leveraging again the PSTN network. And obviously we're giving them the mobility of being able to have what I call a roaming DDI. So if the DDI is tied to your desk on a traditional based PBX platform, PBX system, we essentially can take that and make it mobile or roaming, be it on the phone, laptop, desktop, wherever you are, your DDI goes with you. I think a lot of people, because of the traditional basis of the DDI being stuck to a handset on a desk, have reverted to mobile, giving themselves two avenues of communication. This can really standardize the business communication back to DDIs, back to telephony, and back through enterprise infrastructure and moving away from mobile phone kind of usage. That said, on the mobile phone, of course, you can use the Teams application to still use the dial pad. It's a change in behavior for end users, and that's something that we work on to be able to standardize your medium of communication through the business. On Office 365 and M365 E3, again, it's the Teams phone standard license. Obviously, Microsoft 365 E5 is what I refer to as the kind of utopia or the holy grail of Microsoft licensing. That includes security, compliance, huge amounts of technology there that take a time to actually deploy. We look and we engage our customers around your current posture. Not only can we optimize that excluding voice, but when looking at voice, we make the real recommendation. Not the ones that are just looking at building up to the next big hero SKU. We try and tackle the technology that you're trying to bite off, and in this case, be it Teams phone standard. I'll come back to a little bit of a piece around licensing at the end when I'm talking about the Teams rooms. But for now, what I'll do is I'll pass it back to James, who can introduce you to Steve.
Oh, that's great, Jonathan. Look, thanks for that. You know, obviously, you've done a whistle-stop tour there, which is fine, but licensing is complex. So, you know, so I've been encouraging people to reach out to you to look at licensing posture all up. You can find that providers, and dare I say it, Microsoft themselves may encourage towards a certain higher value SKU, but it might not be the most economically advantageous for an organization. So there are routes, I suppose, to actually keeping that cost down. I just want to make sure that point is emphasized. So thanks for that, Jonathan. And I know that we'll speak to you again in a while. So look, just like to introduce Steve Bush. Steve is our top consultant here at MJ Flood Technology with the most experience and, you know, sort of from a design perspective in the trenches. I've never seen a stumbling block that he can't get over. So that's a challenge to everyone this morning. If you can fire in an awkward question to catch Steve out, we might even give a prize for that later on. So Steve, without further ado, I'll hand over to you, and you can take us through the MJ Flood voice offering, and over to you.
Okay. Thanks, James, and good morning, everyone. I'm Steve Bush, and I'm a Teams consultant at MJ Flood Technology. The idea of this talk is to look at options for how to bring telephony to your Teams environment. First, I'll quickly clarify what we mean by calling versus telephony. Then we'll talk a little bit about Microsoft calling plans, Microsoft Direct Routing, and then onto the MJ Flood voice proposition. Can you switch this slide, please, Rachel? So calling versus telephony. With Teams, you can be making a call from your PC or using Teams on a mobile device or from a meeting room, assuming it's a Teams compatible device. And the person on the other end of that call can again be someone on a PC, someone on a mobile device, or someone in another meeting room. The point is they're both using the Teams client, be that a soft client or a Teams traditional handset. So those things are calling. But when we talk about telephony, that's when we're doing a call that ends outside of Teams. It stops being a PC to PC or a network-based call, and at some point it breaks out onto what we know as the traditional telephony network, the PSTN. Also in Teams, we have the ability for people to dial a phone number from outside of the Teams ecosystem and join a Teams meeting that is in progress. So those are the elements we mean by telephony. It's where we're dealing with something that is outside of Teams. Focusing on telephony, there's two things to consider. Firstly, meetings, that scenario where you dial out from a meeting that is ongoing or you dial into a meeting that someone has scheduled. And secondly, telephony, that's where you have users making or receiving normal phone calls. Next slide, please, Rachel. I'm not going to talk much about the meeting side of things as the choices here are fairly limited. It's either on or it's off. So if you require audio conferencing in your meeting, i.e. the ability for users who aren't using Teams to dial in from a traditional phone, then the Teams meeting organizer requires an audio conference license. They schedule a Teams meeting and the dial-in information will be added to the meeting that you see on the slide. Next slide, please. So calling plans or direct routing. To bring telephony to your Teams environment, there are two main choices, calling plans or direct routing. Calling plans are a first-party offering from Microsoft. Microsoft become your telco and they provide the PSTN. So why use calling plans? Well, the main reason is simply convenience. So you're already paying Microsoft for your Microsoft 365 subscriptions that gives you Teams. Calling plans is another add-on that gives your users bundled minutes. Why not use calling plans? Well, they're expensive. Every user must be assigned a calling plan, regardless of whether that user makes 1 or 2 calls a month, or indeed they only receive inbound calls. They still have to have a calling plan. Calling plans lack global coverage. Yes, you'll find them in the UK, Ireland, the US, but a lot of locations you might have a presence that there is no coverage. And the final thing about calling plans is they offer limited deployment flexibility. So direct routing, on the other hand, enables you to bring your own SIP trunk to the Microsoft 365 environment through the deployment of a SBC, a session border controller, be that hosted yourself and your site in a partner data center in the cloud, or by a service provider. So MJ Flood Voice, that we'll talk about soon, leverages direct routing technology to connect clients to the service. Next slide, please. So direct routing with a supported SBC enables you to bring your own telco to Teams, maintain your own phone numbers and ranges, and integrate your legacy phone system or other third-party voice applications you may have. Or maybe you use this as an opportunity to move telcos. Perhaps you can get more competitive calling rates from somewhere else. So instead of assigning a calling plan to users where instead they have an on-premise phone number, so one of your DDIs, and we assign a voice routing policy to them. So when a user makes an outbound call from Teams, the Teams service routes the call via the SBC according to the rules that we have configured in the tenant. Next slide, please. So why use direct routing? Well, the key reason is it offers you flexibility you simply don't have with calling plans. It gives you a choice of who the telco is, the type of SBC used, a lot better choices of integration for services that might have to stay behind, and you can choose how you want to deliver those telephony services. It basically puts you in control of telephony delivery to your Teams environment. So you can leverage your existing telco services. You might already have a SIP trunk. You might even have ISDN that you might want to maintain. We still do come across some customers that got analog circuits. You can take all of those PSTN services into Teams. You might have multiple different circuits and from different telcos, and you might choose to leverage those circuits in different orders to achieve least cost routing and high availability. So you can mix and match, and with direct routing, the technology stays the same. So direct routing is available in 181 countries. You can actually use it anywhere in the world where you're able to have IP connectivity to your SBC, but Microsoft optimized their network for direct routing in 181 countries, including Ireland. So basically, if you've got an SBC in these countries, it's connected to the network. Microsoft are going to connect any traffic from your SBC to their service via the most efficient route possible. Next slide, please. So SBC choices. Microsoft don't have a certification program for telcos or partners that offer direct routing, but they do certify SBCs from certain vendors that can be used for direct routing. The main ones being audio codes and Ribbon, plus there's others that you see on this slide. MJ Flood Technology, our Ribbon partner, we've deployed a huge number of Ribbon SBCs, both on-prem, in cloud, in public-private cloud, and often to very complex telephony environments. So when choosing an SBC, options to consider include, is it going to be physical or is it going to be virtual? Are you going to host it in private or public cloud? What interfaces do you require? The number of SIP channels and so on. One thing that not many people talk about with Teams is there's no support for analog devices. So what happens to your fax machines? What happens to the fax that might be integrated into your multifunction devices, your franking machines, chip and pin readers, and so on? If you were to go down the Microsoft calling plans, there's simply no support for those analog devices. But with direct routing and SBC integration, we can still maintain those devices. We can connect them to the PSTN network. We can integrate them with Teams. Next slide, please. So moving on to MJ Flood Voice. We've been helping customers to move to Teams telephony for the last 4 years or so, and before that, Skype for Business. So we now find that most organizations are using Teams. They often start with IM and Presence, Teams meetings, then they adopt collaboration, which is the Teams and channel side of things. And then Teams quickly becomes a key business tool. And the next stage of the Teams evolution is to add telephony. We're finding end users themselves are going to their IT departments and they're saying, we want this. So it's the next kind of natural step to simply add telephony into that Teams client that's already become so important on the desktop. A question we were asked time and time again over the past few years is, MJ Flood are already doing the Teams side, we're already managing the Office 365 environment in a lot of cases. Can we also deliver PSTN to Teams? So customers didn't want to maintain separate contracts with different telcos, and they were looking for Teams telephony and PSTN to be supplied and managed by a single partner, one number to ring, one organization to deal with, basically a one-stop shop for Teams voice. Next slide, please. So if we look at the components of MJ Flood Voice, we've built MJ Flood Voice with our partner Coolwave, a wholesale SIP provider and part of the Imagine Group. So their platform delivers scalable, high performance in-country SIP trunking and the ability to deploy Teams globally. So we have customers using MJ Flood Voice for their Ireland user base and also using the same platform for their overseas locations. We've done lots of deployments where the main telephony, the main user base is in Ireland, but organizations also have an overseas presence. And organizations have come along and they've said we want that same Teams experience to be available to those overseas locations as the colleagues in Ireland, and that's what we can deliver through MJ Flood Voice. So in the Office 365 cloud, we've got the Teams service and the Microsoft phone system. So the Microsoft phone system is the PBX, that's the heart of the enterprise voice side of the deployment. So we deploy a virtual ribbon SBC in Azure, and we connect the ribbon SBC to Teams using the direct routing technology and to the MJ Flood Voice service using SIP trunks. So deploying the SBC in Azure means it's very well connected to the Teams backend infrastructure, and customers immediately benefit from things such as media optimization. We can provide new telephone numbers and port your existing telephone numbers to MJ Flood Voice. That's an expertly managed process to ensure no or very minimal disruption to any end users. Next slide, please. So this slide shows a simple MJ Flood Voice deployment. So it's very easy to connect Teams to MJ Flood Voice. You can get this up and running very quickly. So first, we set up some Teams tenant basics. So we have to pair the ribbon SBC with the Teams tenant. And then we create some voice routes via the SBC, and we add these to a voice routing policy. Then we assign a Teams phone standard license to a user. We assign them a DDI, a telephone number, and then we assign them the voice routing policy. So very quickly, that user can now place and receive PSTN calls. They're live with Teams telephony. You might also want to create auto attendance and call queues, like Jonathan mentioned earlier, to distribute incoming calls to users. Perhaps your main office number is an example. So that's all it takes to get up and running with MJ Flood Voice. You might want to further customize the setup. For example, you might want to create caller ID policies to control how numbers appear when users make outbound calls. You might want some users to present their own DDI. You might want to mask customer service department, for example, behind a customer services facing number. There's other things you might want to do, such as how you handle unassigned numbers. Can we move on to the next slide, please? So this slide shows a recent MJ Flood Voice project we did for a customer, where there was integration with the legacy PBX. So the customer had a legacy Cisco CUCM deployment. Although that was just the phone system, it was made up of about 14 virtual machines across multiple servers. It was completely out of support with Cisco, very aging hardware and expensive ISDN circuits that the customer had to maintain to support around 600 users across their head office and branch office sites in Ireland. So the diagram on the left shows the final Teams voice state, but to get there, the customer required a phased migration of users and services given the nature of their business and the multiple sites they operated across. So we worked with the customer's Cisco support partner to connect their Cisco PBX to Teams, to route inbound calls to Teams, and to enable users remaining on Cisco to call a user on Teams using the same extension numbers and vice versa. Basically, if you've got colleagues who are on Cisco, they shouldn't have to know that colleague's now been moved to Teams. They should be able to dial that number and it connects and vice versa. So rather than tell everyone when they come into work on a Monday, they must now use Teams, the customer was able to move users to the schedule they required with seamless interoperability between users on Cisco and their colleagues migrated to Teams. With all of the users migrated to Teams, we then ported the numbers to MJ Flood Voice Service, allowing the customer to cancel the ISDN circuits and decommission their PBX. And they ended up with a simple telephony deployment that's shown in the diagram on the left, where you've got MJ Flood Voice. They actually chose to have some high availability of the SBCs. They actually put one ribbon SBC in Azure North, which is in Europe, and the other in Azure West Europe, which is in Amsterdam. Can you move on to the next slide, please, Rachel? So there's a range of third-party integrations available to Teams. Auto attendance and call queue functionality in Teams, which you would know as IVRs and hunt groups in other legacy phone systems, is very, very good and keeps getting better. However, there may be scenarios where a customer requires a third-party solution for the contact center and high-volume call takers. So in our portfolio, we have Anywhere 365 and Enghouse Interactive Communication Center. Both are certified for Teams via the Connected Contact Center for Teams certification program. So these solutions all offer omni-channel queuing. So in addition to voice, you can also bring video, email, chat, SMS, and social media to your contact center. Your agents will use the same client, the same Teams interface to manage these different interactions. It's just you give different priorities. So obviously voice, video, they're real time. They'd have a higher priority than email or SMS. Compliance recording. So you can record Teams calls and meetings and they're saved to OneDrive for Business. But where there's a requirement to automatically record calls and meetings for subsequent processing and retention to meet any corporate or regulatory policies that you have, we have two solutions in our portfolio. So Enghouse Quality Management Suite, QMS, and Dubber. QMS sounds like quite a posh name for a call recorder, but it actually does more than that. It also offers agent evaluation. So if you've got a contact center, you can actually use that platform to also handle your agent evaluation. So kind of it would be linked to recordings, and then agents and supervisors would give feedback on those recordings. Reporting, so out of the box rich reporting is available in Teams on both usage and quality. So you'll get usage statistics per workload, including Teams PSTN calling. Ultimately, these stats will tell you is the service good. Call quality statistics will allow you to check the call quality. You can ensure that call quality is good in both Teams calls and meetings. And you'll also get call detail records, so who called who, when, and for how long. Where there's a requirement for enhanced reporting, we have Enghouse Proteus and Softex UC analytics in our portfolio. Typically, we see customers requiring third-party solutions where they've got a requirement, for example, to cross-charge PSTN calling to other departments. So the the reporting solution will be programmed with your tariff, and then that can automatically cross-charge calls to different business departments, different business units. I'm not going to talk about Microsoft Teams devices because Jonathan's going to cover that in the next part of this presentation. So thank you very much for your time, and I'll hand back over to James.
That's great, Steve. Thanks for that. And again, look, a whistle-stop tour. You know, and obviously you get into a lot more detail around those, you know, around those topics. So look, you know, Teams rooms. This is really a revelation in terms of Teams. You know, rooms and presentation rooms and that sort of thing. You know, again, was back to a black box, which you know, been held by a number of providers, very costly, difficult to maintain, and that is now you know, evolved and, you know, is much more cost effective. And I'm going to ask Jonathan now just to quickly run through, you know, some of the options around Teams rooms, and we'll chat to you in a while. Over to you, Jonathan.
Thanks, James. Yeah, good tee up for that in terms of the utilization of Teams rooms. Seconds. So I suppose, what is a Microsoft Teams room? And essentially it's building an infrastructure within a room and being able to one button join into any Teams meeting, whether that be, you know, in a meeting on your own where you want a better space with better microphone and better speakers, or you want to have a group collaboration within a room. The world of hybrid working and the stats that we're kind of seeing is that, you know, 70 to 75% of the time, given the way that we're working now, in a joint meeting, more than one participant is going to be remote. So what we're trying to do is bring the meeting experience of the in-room collaboration online and making sure that they're getting the best out of it. So it's about inclusivity. One of the things that we kind of address when looking at AV traditionally, and now we're unifying into Microsoft Teams rooms, is that they're easy to use. I know from a lot of my clients, and I'll tell us kind of anecdotally, they could do all of the magic in terms of the IT infrastructure. They can make great strides. If people walk into a room and the AV system won't work, you know, they're getting a hard time. So it's really prevalent in terms of being able to deliver this and all of the benefits, but making it very easy to use. And then essentially what we're looking at is that flexibility. Is there a room solution for every room? And the answer to that is there absolutely is. Microsoft have developed the Microsoft Teams room license that includes security, which backs up James's point around there's no longer point solutions without the adoption or the consideration of security. So we can bring in room accounts, resource accounts, and secure them with the likes of Azure Active Directory and Intune and all of these technologies to make sure that we're not leaving an account unprotected on the network. So what we're looking to do is really kind of make it easy to deploy these solutions and do it very cost effectively as well. You know, the reason why this type of solution is now coming to the forefront for companies like MJ Flood is it's becoming easier to deploy, and it's becoming a part of the IT infrastructure and the network. It's no longer the case of looking at a room and looking to spend, you know, 20, 30, 40,000 euro with massive integrations, massive complexity, and multiple different vendors. We're looking to unify it into one vendor, or and secure it from a Microsoft point of view using the Microsoft backend infrastructure, and it works seamlessly with Microsoft Teams. So the main things that we want to do is obviously that one-touch join. We invite this room solution, and essentially the meeting pops up on the touch panel that you see in the middle of the slide there, and the user walks in, presses join. They're now voice and video. We've then got really intuitive ways with these systems to then actually start sharing content. So we're really ticking every box in terms of the collaboration. In terms of the scalability, as I mentioned earlier, we can move from the small space to the huddle space to the auditorium. All you're doing is changing the peripherals and adding to the peripherals of a Teams room, extra mics, extra camera, better lighting, all of these type of things that we need to just look at as we scale up the size of the rooms. Microsoft have a certification program for this technology, and these are the kind of the 7 manufacturers of this at the moment. MJ Flood work across Yealink and Poly. But you can see the only difference is really the form factor, and in terms of the peripherals that you're using. The interface and the application is very much the same across all of the vendors. So really the question is, am I ready to put in a Teams room? Then it's just about picking what's available, what's the most cost effective, and what might my IT provider be able to support even better. A big question we get is around integrations and WebEx and Zoom, because although you might be a Teams house, your customers might not be. With the simple toggle of a setting within any of these systems, you have the ability to be able to join a Zoom and WebEx meeting that's built into the OS. And then in terms of the kind of screen collaboration and the sharing element, we can make that very simple through wired or wireless connections as well. On the endpoints that we touched on earlier, and really, to be honest with you, as a matter of feedback, these are becoming probably less pervasive in the deployments that we are doing, where people are meeting end users' demands in terms of putting desks on the phones on desks. Utilization is quite low, so we're all used to the headset experience now, and we're all used to that having mobile experience. So that's really changing the way. But if you do need to do it in terms of a common area phone in a warehouse, there's a license for that. There's a phone for that. If you want to have the high-end desk and video phones within the kind of C-level executive office, there are options for that across all of the brands, and these are compatible with Microsoft Teams out of the box. A very, very busy slide, but I think it's very easy to kind of see exactly what the story that I'm trying to tread. There is a solution for every single space. Outside of one-to-one meetings and sitting at our desk, if we have room resource available, we should really be considering optimizing that and giving a better experience in a Teams room scenario. I'll fly through this because I don't want to make sure there's time for the Q&A, but the Teams rooms examples here, you can see from the size and scale in terms of what we deploy. We need a display. We need the Teams rooms technology in terms of the brains of the operation. And then we need to add mic and speakers to give that audio and visual experience. In terms of analyzing a room, we're more than happy to come in and look and do a survey of your room or rooms, and then come back with recommendations based on what might suit that room in particular, i.e. ceiling mics, i.e. table mics. All of these considerations we use our AV experience in terms of deployment, of which we're putting out probably 25 rooms a week now at this stage. It's become a huge part of our business. So if you have a space and if you're looking to maybe optimize it or make it that little bit more kind of next gen, we're more than happy to speak to you on that. Back to you, James.
Perfect, Jonathan. Look, that's really good, and look, lot of range, a lot of choice there, which is brilliant, and to suit every environment. So look, we're running bang on time, which is great. I see that Steve Bush is busy with the Q&A there, so hopefully that's all getting covered. So look, we're moving on to customer Q&A, and I'm delighted to welcome John Morris from BS&B onto the call this morning. John, we got you up very early this morning because I know that you're in the States, so we appreciate that. But look, I'd invite you, John, maybe to give us a little bit of a sense of your organization in terms of scale and geography and all of that sort of thing. Welcome, John. Just on mute there, John.
Apologies, guys. Good morning, James, again. How are you? I suppose from my own company's perspective, BS&B, we've got locations at the moment in 22 different countries. We have about 586 employees worldwide. Our business is a manufacturing type of business. We work in rupture disc and flame suppression systems type technology for aerospace, oil and gas, pharmaceutical, and so forth. I suppose for us, Teams is, we started a journey, with Skype for Business, and we progressed from there, I suppose, is how it worked for us back in 2017.
Look, good stuff, John, and that's a good overview. In terms of, did you see any TCO or ROI with the solution when fully deployed?
Well, I suppose There's a few things at play here. I mean, we used to have our board meetings would be every quarter, and we would fly everybody in from different parts of the world for the meetings. They would go on for 2 weeks. We would have, first of all, our management meetings, then we'd have our sales meetings. So the cost of, I suppose, flying everybody in, hotels, the whole lot, for that period would be now negated by the fact that we can just bring people in with Teams, and they can be in their home office. We can get the meetings over quickly, promptly, and move on from there. So that's one indication. I mean, if you look at that alone, I mean, ROI, for us is less than 6 months, based on the amount of people. Also, I suppose from a COVID perspective, for us, Teams was a game changer because we could now have our people, pick up their laptops or computers in some cases. They could literally go home. They could now log in and work as if they were in the office because their phone number was with them no matter where they were. Because in most cases we would have used, we would have ported our numbers up to Microsoft where we couldn't in places like India. We would have used the session border controller, and we would have worked off the local provider there. But it also meant that all them guys could work from home. So I mean, for us, it was invaluable. I mean, it meant we could continue to do business during that period.
Great stuff, John. And John, just in terms of, we're remarking that Teams is a journey. So, would you be advanced in that journey, mid? How would you describe it, or have you ways to go with it?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of Teams, I mean, it's a cultural change for us within the organization. I mean, we're seeing people using Teams now that we would never have taught ourselves. I mean, emails have been replaced by instant messaging, for instance. People are sending documents now through Teams that they'd normally send through emails before. So it's a responsiveness. I mean, you're seeing a lot more interaction between employees. You can see with the I am in presence if somebody's online after a meeting, you're not going to disturb them. So you'll wait till they're finished, or you'll send them a chat message, they'll respond to it directly. So you're getting more real-time, more instant communications, we're finding. What we're finding as well is that in terms of places like India, where we used to have very poor audio in the past, I mean, now, the clarity of the communication out of India is super. I mean, I've a call every day at 12 o'clock, and I mean, it's like they're in the next room. So, I mean, for us, that's huge as well. Just having good communications on the fly. We have a very mobile workforce, so we have people all over the world. They're traveling all the time. People are now contactable like they weren't before. They're on their mobile phone. They're in the airport somewhere. They can jump on a call. So, I find that hugely valuable just for getting our business done.
Yeah. So really, we're talking about significant productivity gains then within that. So obviously, I'm quite biased in we would have worked with you with Teams, obviously, John. But to sort of get out the warts and all, would you have any sort of learnings or anything that you might have done differently in terms of deployment or user adoption, or any sort of difficulties that can translate to advice to anybody on this call, considering a move to Teams?
Yeah, I suppose one of the things we did originally was we tried to mimic our existing systems. Like we would have had Avaya systems, we would have had Alcatel systems in different locations. We tried to mimic them. When I say mimic, I mean we would have bought handsets for individuals. What we found along the way, particularly during COVID and after COVID, is that people didn't want their handsets anymore. People started removing them from their desks. We ended up, buying people headsets instead, and now the culture is everybody's using a headset because it means they can get up, have a cup of coffee, or make a cup of coffee and still go back to their desk and be on the same call. So it gives people, they're not tied to their desks anymore. Same with mobile phones. You're on a call, a conference call. You can now switch the call directly to your mobile phone without losing connectivity. You can do other stuff. I mean, people, have collected their kids, sometimes, while they're still on a call. So it gives you that flexibility. One of the other things we like as well is the ability to train. We've done a lot of training sessions on Teams where we've recorded the sessions. We've brought people in, customers, distributors, into some of our sessions with new products that we're doing. And we then put them up on a platform that users can view. So for us, that's hugely valuable. And I suppose the last thing then as well is, the ability for IT, which is my own area, is to, people who are remotely working from home, you can now log in, you can video chat with them if they've got a problem. You can take control of their computer, you can fix the problem. Again, these are valuable tools that we used throughout the pandemic.
Yeah, good stuff, John. Look, it's good insight. Any advice for anybody considering, what to call it, anything that you would think would be, key to consider in terms of, and I know, look, it's an open-ended question because everybody's journey is different, but is there any sort of key tenets that you would say are vitally important in terms of looking at deployment?
I suppose if you're looking to take control of your phone system, I mean, you're trying to, negate the costs of being with a proprietary system that's out there. I mean, that was one of the things from a business continuity perspective, the ability to now have a system that works. If you want good HD audio, like I mentioned with India, places like in China, these are the things that tick the boxes for us, allowed us to continue to do business and do it successfully in these areas.
Excellent, John. Look, I really appreciate you taking the time this morning, because I know what time is it there where you are now?
I'm on 5 a.m. at the moment.
You're on 5 a.m. Yeah, so we really appreciate you taking the time, John, to come on and to talk to us this morning. So look, we're drawing to a close now. In terms of this morning's webinar, we might just flick on the So look, why choose MJ Flood Technology? I talked it at the top. We're the top partner in the country from a Microsoft perspective, with the most experience in terms of deployment of complex and simple solutions. I listen to advertisements on the radio of 5,000 plus users. We have deployments that are 5,000 plus. We have deployments that are 50 users. So we work right across that stack. But be careful in terms of choosing the right provider, in terms of them being a trusted advisor, and you getting the absolute best experience that is possible. We've talked about, we didn't name companies, but we talked about cost savings in terms of it. I can tell you that that particular example is a mid-range solicitors with 600 users. The savings in terms of that particular one translated to about 40,000 a year, and I'm not talking about soft costs within that. I'm talking about actual tangible. So it just was an absolute no-brainer in terms of moving. If you are sitting with a communications provider today, the likelihood is you are paying too much for your phone systems. That is just simply a fact. The game has changed, and you should be looking to providers like ourselves to be able to sweat those assets, get the good advice, and get a very positive experience for your organization. Now, we've covered an awful lot within that, and I'm sure there may be questions that people have. Please engage with us. We're take a 30-minute call to evaluate in terms of an assessment with us, and we tell you very quickly in terms of what can be saved, and what your best approach is to implementation. So look, with that in mind, we're just a minute ahead of time, so we absolutely timed that perfectly. Always believe in finishing on time for people, because you've given us your valuable time to come and be with us this morning. We appreciate that. Thank you to all of our contributors this morning. John Morris, Steve Bush, Jonathan Finglas, Rachel and Kevin for moderating and keeping us even when we went went technically slightly wrong. They saved us and brought us back on track. So we thank them for that. And look, thank you to everybody that's given us their time this morning, and reach out to us and engage and get your journey started, or check where you are within it. We're delighted to become involved with you. So thank you all, and good morning. Cheers.